Today's mental investment, and we are still reading out of Three Magic Words by U.S. Anderson. And today we are reading chapter 12, which is the last chapter of the book, I think. Yeah. Chapter 12, The Key. This is the little blurb that starts the chapter. That which from self made each mortal, self unto each mortal must be. Thus, the key that unlocks the portal to God is thyself. Thou art He. You are God. The veil removed. This is the ineffable secret, the ultimate illumination, the key to peace and power. You are God. If you will accept this towering truth, dare to stand atop this magnificent pinnacle, universal consciousness will be revealed to you from within. God is there. It is He who peers from behind your eyes, who is your own consciousness, who is your very self. You are not just a part of God, you are altogether God, and God is altogether you. God is universal subconscious mind, the intelligence that pervades all times and places, the design and order and consciousness of all things. God becomes things. He becomes all things. He has become you. God is not your body, not your ego, but your sense of being, your I. There is only one I in the universe. The same sense of self is in everyone. It appears to be different in life because it clothes itself in different forms. These forms wither and decay, but the self is always one and indivisible and changeless. Every person that lives, every person that will ever live, every creature and thing, all are all one in spirit. All are God, and each is altogether God. Each of us is altogether God because infinite intelligence cannot divide itself. It makes a seeming division in flesh, but never in spirit. For infinity is always one and indivisible. God manifests completely in each thing, and each thing is a manifestation of God's knowledge of Himself. Your consciousness is God's consciousness. Your idea of self is God's idea of Himself. The ideas you accept are automatically manifested in life. For what God knows, He creates. And what you know is created, for you are God. I hope that makes you happy. I hope that gives you a sense of peace and a sense of power versus a sense of blasphemy. If it gives you a sense of blasphemy, then it's still because you don't accept that what you were created of, who you are, is God. And so let me think about the best way to help you get over that and what material I can share that can help you realize that your help is not external to you. You are sovereign within yourself once you learn that you are God and that you are a creator and you create. Okay, I'm going to continue. Universal consciousness. God is consciousness and awareness and order and design and knowledge and intelligence and spirit. He is infinite. He cannot know himself as infinity, but only by becoming something finite. Thus, God seeks to expand his sense of self by becoming things. And each thing says, I am this. What you believe to be is what you believe God to be. The limitations and lacks you impose upon yourself, you impose upon God. No one can possibly believe there is any limitation on God. Thus, the magnificent truth is that there is no limitation on any man. Through each of us, God attains self-consciousness, and each of us is God incarnate. In our lives, we accept the limitations of the flesh and the inhibitions of the ego, and thus we fall short of God consciousness. We ask ourselves where we have come from and where we are going, for we have lost the remembrance of having always been, just as we cannot see that we will always be. The development of our ego thrusts upon us a precarious duality of mind, wherein conscious mind overruns universal subconscious mind, and we come to regard ourselves as ego only. instead of universal self, which we truly are. How can God possibly be the poor thing that I am? A man will ask himself, identifying himself with ego and failing to perceive that he is consciousness only. Free yourself from the bonds of the ego, and you will forget the poor thing that you thought you were and become one with God. So that's their advice on how to do it, on how to not feel blasphemous about thinking or knowing or saying that you are God. Free yourself from your ego. Realize that it's your ego that has the conflict with it, and you got to free yourself from that. You can do that through meditation. That's a good place to start, to put that ego to rest so that you can hear your inner self and begin to recognize it and trust it, because that's what's needed. Okay, illumination. This far, you can be guided, but the attainment of enlightenment is yours to achieve alone. Words and logic have never yet provided the great illumination, which must come to each man in his own way. If you will accept with perfect faith the premise that all truth is spiritual, if you will discard the promptings of the ego and the noisy sensual stimuli of the material world, if you will search for revelation at the center of consciousness, then the kingdom of heaven will be yours. Letting go of ego may seem like letting go of life itself, and so it is, even as Jesus said, who loses his life shall find it. Illumination, the arrival at God consciousness, the spiritual perception that you are God, will come to you through meditation. As an experience, it is universally the same, but perhaps has never been as well described as by Edward Carpenter. And Edward Carpenter says, the brain is stilled. It does not cease from its natural and joyful activities, but it ceases from that terrified and joyless quest which was inevitable to it as long as its own existence, its own foundation, its own affiliation to the everlasting being was in question or doubt. The man at last lets thought go. He glides below it into the quiet feeling, the quiet sense of his own identity with the self of other things, of the universe. He glides past the feeling into the very identity itself, where a glorious consciousness leaves no room for separate self thoughts or emotions. He leans back in silence on that inner being and bars off for a time every thought, every movement of the mind, every impulse to action, or whatever in the faintest degree may stand between him and that. And so there was, and so there comes to him a sense of absolute repose. Repose? And so there comes to him a sense of absolute repose, a consciousness of immense and universal power, such as completely transforms the world for him. All life is changed. He becomes a master of his fate. He perceives that all things are hurrying to perform to his will. And whatever in that region of inner life he may be condensed to desire, that already is shaping itself to utterance and expression in the outer world about him. In such a manner does a man come to the realization that he himself is God. In such a manner does he learn to turn his attention from the material world and originate all things on the plane of mind. By forsaking ego and finding his true self, whatever he thinks, conceives, or desires will manifest in the physical world. He becomes the doer, the knower, the creator, makes all things from self, is the self of all things. Though this knowledge is not new, it has been exceedingly rare and held among a very few men. All the ages of life's evolution, up through the slime and mist of a fetid and newly formed earth, have pointed toward it. There is only one consciousness in all things, one consciousness which assumes countless forms in search of ever greater knowledge about itself. The infinite self becomes the finite self. And the day when finite self recognizes itself as infinite self is the day that exposes eternity. This little hour, this little life where we are focused now is but an instant in the eons of our being. We are that very power that constructed the heavens and the earth. And when we have cast out ego and the limitations of our thinking, the multi-dimension heavens are revealed to be in our own souls. We have looked in the mountains and he has not been there. We have looked on the plain and he has not been there. We have searched the sea and the air and the earth and the sky and he has not been there. How should we find him when we looked outside? He dwelt within, was in truth our very selves. Mm, mm, mm. That's good. We have looked in the mountains and he has not been there. We have looked on the plain and he has not been there. We have searched the sea and the air and the earth and the sky and he has not been there. How should we find him when we looked outside? He dwelt within, was in truth our very selves. We looking for everywhere else, everything else, everybody else for our help. And it's always been right within us. Lock and key. The lock that bars us from the recognition that we are God is the creation of the ego and the first memories and inhibitions of the conscious mind. This lock may be undone through meditation, through taking unto ourselves universal consciousness, through arrival at the spiritual kingdom of heaven. And the key that unlooses all power is the revelation that each man is God. Mind is consciousness, is intelligence, and there is only one mind, which is the mind of God. All things are made from it, but the spirit never changes. It is limitless, one and changeless. Universal subconscious mind creates in the physical world those ideas that the conscious mind adopts as beliefs. Those are paradigms. We create evil by false thinking, by ideas of lack and limitation and pain and sorrow and disease. Such evil is illusion because it proceeds from the errors of conscious mind and may be banished by donning the mantle of immortal self at the center of consciousness. We don't have to accept evil or error in thoughts. We can control our thoughts and change our thoughts to change our reality. The physical world is but a tiny extension of a vast spiritual realm. A physical law is subordinate to spiritual law. A physical law is subordinate to spiritual law, meaning that spiritual law will always overrule physical law. For the physical world is a secondary chain of effects, while the spiritual world is the first cause, the law of cause and effect. What you do will cause an effect. So what you do in spirit, you see the effect of it in the physical world. When man's consciousness expands beyond ego, beyond conscious mind, beyond the limitations of the prompters, thoughts are immediately manifested on the physical plane. Thought transference, clairvoyance, mental healing, and creativeness are all evidences of the superphysical power of universal subconscious mind. A man adds all things unto himself by taking a position with impregnable faith. Faith moves, this is good, so listen. Faith moves universal subconscious mind to creation, but it is only the ego that must use faith. When the ego goes and God consciousness comes, thought is immediately followed by the thing, for there remains nothing to overcome. It's the only time we really got to operate in faith is when we're operating in out of our ego. That's a good way to look at things. Like, are we having to, pray, okay, I got faith, I got faith, I got faith, I got faith? Or are you just knowing? By identifying or recognizing what energy you're operating out of, you'll know if it's the ego or your God self. That's a good hint. That's a good tip. All conceptions of limitation and lack and guilt and pain and shame and remorse are cast out with the ego. Nothing but God remains, and whatever God knows is created. We attract into our lives the physical manifestations of the thoughts we think. And in order to attract good instead of evil, we must learn to control our thinking, to think positively instead of negatively, or beneficially versus non-beneficially. We must be able to choose good thoughts. You get to choose. You get to decide. If a man thinks only in response to the stimuli of the outer world, he remains ego only, an automaton. But when he originates thoughts at the center of consciousness, he creates his own life in the image of his desires and dons the mantle of immortal self. That is the chapter of Lock and Key. And like the end of every chapter, they have a meditation. So let's read that 12 meditation. I turn away from the world about me to the world of consciousness that lies within. I shut out all memories of the past, create no images of the future. I concentrate on my being, on my awareness. I slide deep into the very recesses of my soul to take a place of utter repose. Here I perceive fact in the making, am conscious of the one being from which all beings spring. I know that this is immortal self. This is God. This is me. I am. I always was. I always will be. All men, all things, all space and time and life are here in the depths of my soul. Smaller than small, greater than great, meet and unite in me. That which I thought I was, ego, I never was at all, for it was a changing thing, mirroring the seasons and the tides, a thing to be born and grow and die. I am not a thing of time or circumstance. I am spirit, pure and eternal, birthless, deathless, and changeless. I am patient, for I am all time. I am wise, for I contain the knowledge of all things. I know not pain, for I see there is no beginning and no end, and who suffers pain must see beginning and end. I am rich, for there is no limit to the abundance I may create from my very self. I am successful, for I need only to think to achieve. I love and am beloved, for all things are myself and I am all things. I unite, I fuse, I become one with universal subconscious mind. The mask of vanity and ego I shall never wear again. I perceive the magnificent dweller at the center of my consciousness, and I know him to be my very self. Time and space, shadow and substance, what matter these? I am God. You are God. Everything that exists is God, expressing himself, experiencing itself. I'm saying himself because that's the word that's in this book. But infinite intelligence has both the energy of both genders, male and female, as do we all. That is also called the law of gender. We all contain both energies within us, and it is our goal and purpose to balance those energies within ourselves. When we're too much in our masculine energy, then that's when you see, for a woman, that assertiveness, that aggression, maybe that's a better word, that aggression, maybe some anger, some not so much of the grace that a woman would display. And then when you're too much in your feminine energy, you act as if some women act as if they can do nothing. They're helpless, and I only have my beauty, my looks to go off of. And it's so much deeper than that. It's about creating and nurturing and providing and protecting. And all of us have our own roles. And inside of each of us is that male, masculine, and feminine energy. It's divine. It's meant for us to tap into, operate out of naturally. Honestly, we shouldn't have to tap into anything because it's already there. Just be you. In the art of just being yourself, your natural self, your natural abilities, your natural state is always present and is always operating, is always leading and guiding us. It's when we get out of our natural being because we are attempting to be like someone else, something else, that is when that error or that sin, that error in thinking comes about. So what we all should do is just take a little bit of time to think about the fact that you are God. Do you believe that? Are you having trouble receiving that, digesting that? Do you feel that's blasphemy? Do you meditate? If you don't, do it for me. I just challenge you, do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. Just sit down. Just sit down. Take some deep breaths. Sit down in a place where it's quiet and you don't feel like you'll be disturbed. Just give yourself 5-10 minutes and just take some deep breaths. Whew, that one breath. Just, oh God, I wish I could just bottle that sensation. That one breath that I just took just made my shoulders drop. I felt a crack in my neck. It just released tension. That's what it does. When you get in a bind or you feel yourself being overwhelmed by life, go to deep breaths. Just take a deep breath. Hold it. And release all that negativity, all that toxicity, all those feelings and emotions and thoughts and consequences that don't align with what you are desiring. Breathe in the newness and release all of that other stuff. Do it with intention. But take a moment. Sometimes it just I just did that one breath and I felt that. Now, I've been doing this for 5 years, so it doesn't take me as long to to be able to drop into a trance state, or, to be able to drop right into that divine source of energy for me. But it takes some time to learn that. But the only way you're going to learn is if you start. So, and the way you start is by sitting still, being quiet. You could use some type of meditation, music. When I first started, I would go to binaural frequencies, or the frequency of 528 hertz, or I think 432 hertz, and just play music from YouTube. Just go to YouTube, frequency or hertz 528, put that in, and they mostly have different titles. Whatever title stood out the most to me, I would play it, and my spirit did not reject it. It felt soothing to me. I let it play. And at that point, that helped me to be able to sit still and block everything out and help quiet my mind. Some people do that with marijuana, with weed. I have done that and do that too. But you should not be dependent on anything. You need to know you have to train your body, your mind to quiet, and you have to be able to recognize your energy. You got to be able to do that. You got to learn how to do that. And the only way to learn is to start. And I'm telling you how I started. There probably are many different ways. But a portal to your subconscious mind, to your true immortal self, is through meditation. Another one is through sleep. But let's talk about meditation today. Just sit there. Start off with 3 deep breaths. You feel your belly. Your belly should feel first. And then you feel your chest. Your chest feel, oh shucks, that just came out of the tripod. And then you feel your chest inflate. And then you hold it for as long as you can hold it. And as it's holding, you'll feel that energy just swirling about in your body. And what I do is I say all non-beneficial energy, all stagnant, stale energy hiding in the creases that don't want to come out, that is clinging to whatever it can to stay and hold its place. I release you. I reject you. I eject you as I'm holding that breath and letting it go and uproot everything that's no longer beneficial to me. And then I release it. And then that last breath that you take, though, should be the divine essence of you, the divine energy, the newness, the renewal, the renewal, the divine, the divinity of self, the why am I going blank? But when you bring the newness, right, of fresh breath, of another opportunity, of new chances, you are breathing all of that in to replace all the energy and the what you just released. Because whenever you release something, you have to replace it, because if you don't replace it, you leave a empty space for it to come back and claim its home. That's where it's lived for however long that energy has lived within you. That thought form has lived within you. That belief has lived within you. They don't go away easily. We have to fight. This is a spiritual warfare. You know what I'm saying? With yourself. You're in spiritual warfare against your ego. So, but as soon as you learn to drop that ego, there is no warfare. There is nothing to get over. But until we get there, this is how we do it, right? So, learn how to go into meditation. Just do it for you. You have to make a decision that you are worth your time. You are worth your efforts. You are worth your energy. The life that you live now is, you have the power to choose that. Are you going to choose what you desire? Are you going to accept what's given to you and what you have been told you're capable of or worthy of? I challenge all of that. And I tell you, you're capable of whatever you desire. You're worthy of whatever you desire. You are God incarnate, here to experience itself, to create. Baby, ain't no limitations on that. Let's get busy out here creating. Sabria Morris coming to you today with today's mental investment from Three Magic Words. This is our last reading, our last mental investment from this book, unless I decide to go back to the beginning. But I just finished this book. The last chapter was chapter 12 on the lock and key. And they're talking about the lock and key to your God consciousness. The lock is your ego. The lock is your ego believing that it is you and not just a tiny piece of you in the eon of time. And the key is when you do realize that you are the immortal self, the immortal one that animates all things that you see, that creates all things, people that you see, created the heavens and the earth. That's you. What's in you, what's peering behind you, that I behind you, that consciousness behind you is that. Honey, ain't no limitations in that. We all empowered from that, right? And if we not, let's sit and write. Let's take a moment and think about why we aren't. Let's document why we aren't. Reach out to me if you have any questions about things that you're dealing with as you are coming across or learning all of this new information and your consciousness is expanding and you have questions on, well, what about this? What about that? How I deal with this? Why I'm feeling with that? Why am I feeling this? Let me know in the comments and I'll be glad to come back with more videos on how I addressed it. And if I've not dealt with that, I can do some research and see what other people are addressing it and how I resonate, or what came up from within me when I heard whatever you were dealing with, which is the first place we should always go. We always say Google, 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 but our inner being, our access to the universal subconscious mind, all thought that was ever thought, is our Google, and that should be our first stop. And we access that through meditation, through the dream portal, through trance state. Okay. So yeah, I think that's it for today. I had to change locations because my mama downstairs. I told you my mama here for 2 weeks, but I'm sure she ready to go get out in these streets. So we're about to go do some shopping, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, go to Bank Powder, get y'all some bank powder. BankPowder, bankpowder.com. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.